Evening everyone. My name is Amit and I'm talking to you from our center in Delhi, Ananda Center in Delhi. And welcome to this evening's webinar on Living Wisely, Living Well. So today's reading from Living Wisely, Living Well, I'll just read. It is March 11th. And Swamiji writes, listen as much to the tone of people's voice as to their words. How they speak often expresses as much as what they say. I'll read, this is a small reading, so just one more time. Listen as much to the tone of people's voices as to their words. How they speak often expresses as much as what they actually say. It's a short reading and many of Swamiji's writings are deceptively simple, and this is also one of those. But it's also the power of the way Swamiji writes is there are very esoteric principles, but then he also makes very tangible application of those principles in our world, our daily lives. And this is also one of those readings like that. So this evening, let's see different aspects as we try to explore from this reading. One of the first thing in Paramahansa Yoganandaji's life that he started was a school for children. And Swami Kriyananda is also took that to heart, and later part of his life he also wrote a book called Education for Life based on those principles. There are many schools have started by Ananda and also EFL inspired schools as well. And what is the point? What is the purpose? Again, giving children some kind of a holistic education. Now, this word is very commonly used these days. Pretty much all schools, and there's an attempt to give children who are very what do you say, open at that time. They're not rigid in their formation. Like, it's very difficult at times to talk to adults, but children are very open and receptive, and it is possible to mold them in whichever way at that stage. So the thought is, if you give them the right seeds at an early time, then those seeds have a better chance to bear fruit. And not only that, they will also grow stronger. And many schools and then many places also try to make an attempt to do that. But the challenge with children is what? Challenge with children is we can't talk this language with children. You cannot talk spirituality or on a very esoteric way, because they won't respond back into the same ways, isn't it? I was part of such a school earlier, and then we also were trying to do something similar. But then challenge was, again, how do you see what is that the child is going through? What is the inner reality of the child? What is the inner reflection? So how do you ask child to do that? So in that place where the attempt was to make the child paint something, and through that artistic process, of course, the facilitators and the teachers who were trained to understand that, they could have a glimpse of the child's reality in the inner world. So then that also gives an understanding to the teacher, a way to work with the child. You see, this is very profound, isn't it? When we look at any piece of art, let it be a painting or some music composition, isn't it true? Like that also triggers some things within ourselves. Also, when we look at a beautiful painting or we hear a beautiful piece of music, what is it that we're trying to do? We're also trying to tune into something. What is it that the artist is trying to convey through this painting, or for example, for this piece of music? And from the artist's perspective also, if you see, what they're trying to do is also touch some things very deep core within themselves. Like it could be a very deep emotion, it could be a very genuine truth that that they are able to touch in their own understanding. And then from that space within, they try to give an expression, whatever resonates with them. And that's why it is a very beautiful exchange. It is not necessarily a word exchange, but there is an exchange there. There was a great musical composer, musician. His name was Chopin. You might have heard of him. And there is a book a long time ago I read called The Letters of Chopin. These are the letters that Chopin wrote to his father. And I didn't read the entire book, but in the introduction, he starts, which is mentioned where he writes to his father, he says, "It is so difficult for me to express in words, only if I can just write a piece of music to convey what I feel." Because that was an easier way for him to express. But you see, what is the first in here? The first comes is there is something within. It could be a child, it could be an artist, it could be a musician, it could be any one of us. The first thing is there's something within, and now there is an urge or there is a desire to share it with someone else. And how most of us we do it? That is where we use words, isn't it? So for example, if we are happy, we call our friends and we have a good time with them, and most of the time when we say good times, it also exchanges. We want to share them. This is what happened, and then blah blah blah. What is it that we are trying to share at that moment? It is not just words. It is that some things within us which is like feeling already joyful, and sort of, how do I give this to you? And sort of while you're giving it, you just paste the word onto that consciousness, and then that gets transferred to our friends. And then the same is also true when, for example, we are not feeling very well. We go to a friend, and again, or we want to be that friend to someone who is not having a easy time or a difficult time. When we listen, it helps them relieve that particular feeling as well. But you see, in this exchange, the point we're trying to say here is it's not just an exchange of words, it is much deeper than that. And in this reading, Swamiji is also hinting at it. Okay? Don't just look at words, but you have to go beyond that. And beyond that meaning, try and touch the consciousness of it. You see, like a particular feeling, let it be, we don't confuse a feeling of anger with jealousy, or a feeling of love with joy. No? Every feeling, we understand what I am feeling right now. I'm very happy, I'm very joyful. I'm feeling love. And all these feelings have something, they arise within us, but we know their difference. And we know the particular one which is also present within us. And it is very interesting to see, we have a physical reaction to all these feelings also. Sorry. What I mean by that, you see, a language could be very different. I was earlier in Canada, a French-speaking portion of French-speaking region of Canada, and I didn't know that language then. But it was very interesting that many a times when I'm around these people who probably spoke only French, and I was just listening, I couldn't follow any words, but I was paying attention because that's all what was happening around me. Though I was not able to understand any of the words, just by the texture of that conversation, the tone, as Swamiji was saying, I was able to tell, this is not a good conversation. There's something going on. These two guys are fighting. Sometimes it could be very, there's something joke, they're pulling each other's leg. And then sometime one guy was there and he went, he is in love and he's talking about his girlfriend. I could figure these things out, not the details, but the texture. And just by what? By listening to what the conversation is going. It was like a song for me. But I was able to tune into that, and I think you will all resonate with me also with that. And that is because this tone is not something specific to any religion, any country, or any particular, upbringing. We joke sometimes with this example that as we grew up, did our parents teach us how to smile? This is how we smile in India. Is it like that? Like all of a sudden we go in United States and they laugh in a different way. Is it? No, isn't it? Right? The expression of joy, when we are sad, how things work or how we look like. There's some physical sensation in that. If you want to try when you are really, really upset or angry, try and smile forcibly. It is very difficult even to make that face. And why is that? Because behind those feelings or behind those, as you can say, the expressions of consciousness, there is something they're also trying to express using this body as well. And voice and tone is also one of those. If you hear a person who has anger within him, no matter what language he or she is talking to, if the words are coming out of their mouth, you will able to understand what that energy is. If a person is very ecstatic, very joyful, doesn't matter what language they're speaking, even what type of words they're using, the energy behind that would be something very similar, isn't it? And that is what Swami said, key words sometimes could be misleading. If you just get caught up in word, you will miss the underlying energy which the words are just basically trying to carry. And there is a wonderful example from the life of Buddha which I want to tell a story which sort of exemplifies what is the relevance of it. So Buddha was sitting in his monastery, and this woman came running towards him. She was carrying a very small baby in her hand, and she came to Buddha and then showed the baby to Buddha. I was like, Buddha, please help me. My child is dying. She is very sick. You must help me. I cannot let her go. Buddha was very serious, but he was centered and he was looking at us. He was listening to her. And she was not just, she was saying, you have to do something. You must do something now. I won't let you go otherwise. So Buddha thought for a moment. He looks and says, okay, I will help you, he said. He says, it is possible to save your child. So go, but for that you need to go and get few grains of rice from a home where nobody has ever died. Just few grains of rice from a home where nobody has died. She said, perfect, I'm going right now. So she just leaves the child there, the monks are taking care of it, and she starts running. Goes to the first house and asks that, I need just a couple of grains of rice. They say, sure, we will give you anything for your child, but only if nobody has died in your home. And they says, oh no, sorry, somebody just died a few years ago. So she just rushes to the next home and the next home. Same story, keeps on repeating. And after a few homes, she pauses and she says, wait a minute, what am I actually doing? And then she realizes it is impossible. It is impossible to find a home like that. And while that was a very wise realization for her, in that moment she also gets a very little sad because she understands the reality. And she slowly walks to Buddha and she understands him. And she said, I am sorry and thank you, Master. She goes away with her child. Was it a good response? Yes. In what way? Because you see, as this story says, Buddha couldn't actually help her in the way she was approaching him. He had to let her be wherever she is. He understands that he cannot reason with her. But he understood what is the deepest problem in this situation, is that she's refusing to accept the reality of what it is. And how she can be made understand that only her experience, only wisdom can be can take care of her own grief. Did it reduce her grief? No. But what Buddha did, his response was, he gave her capacity to deal with her grief. And that is how he was able to do that. Because of what? Because he was paying attention. He was able to not just going carried away by her words, not reasoning with her. He understood that in this moment, particular consciousness is expressing it, and it needs to first move around, stabilize, experience, and that experience will lead to wisdom. And this is very beautiful for all of us also to remember when we listen to something. What is the consciousness behind that word? And I would go one step further, saying that this listening is not only to the other person talking and we are listening. It is also, now this is a little difficult because it is easy sometimes to just have that conversation going on and when you are like a third person, isn't it? But this is a very profound and powerful introspective technique. One of Swami Kriyanandaji's student, Swami Asha, she is a spiritual director of Palo Alto, and she talks a lot of her experiences as she was groomed and as a student of Swami Kriyananda ji all this time, over 3 or 4 decades. And she said earlier, when she was new onto the path, and then she also had a very strong personality, and then she would have these moods. And then she said, okay, when something is not happening in her, that she doesn't like, or she's like expressing a resentment, she will find her voice become very shrill. And she actually makes that sound also. I won't make that. But then she understood, the moment she understood that all of a sudden opened a great door for her. You know, don't you agree to that? Like when we're angry, our voice is very different. When we are joyful, our voice is very different. When we are upset with something, we try to like, don't bother me. Like start to swallow our words, like there's not expression or something. If we pay attention, to any communications, how our voice is sounding tells us what is it that we are actually sharing to the person. Very recently, I was also talking to a acquaintance, I would say, and it was very a head conversation, or we were more or less arguing, I would say, but without actually fruitful argument. And I knew from the beginning of that argument that this is going to be not very fruitful, but I think for the sake of it, we were just doing it. Halfway through, I realized that not only that though I consciously engaged in it, the sound of my own voice was not pleasing to myself. And thankfully, because I noticed that, I said, we should drop it. And I dropped it. And the moment I dropped it, the other person had to drop it also. And all of a sudden, then we were able to change the conversation, the tone, to some things very, very, very different. And this is the beauty of it. It's a powerful, powerful introspective technique. Throughout the day, if you just pay attention to how it is sounding, and that sort of tells you like which of it, as we talked about in Inner Kingdom, there are many things or many different, how do you say, not just feelings, but different energies are playing into our consciousness all throughout the day based on what life is bringing and what type of experiences we're going through the day. And as a response to that is what we are probably expressing in the word at times, and then so on and so forth. So if we pay attention to what is it that we are throwing, and all of a sudden we catch, okay, I know this sound, and this sound, especially when an argument is, I don't know, I don't want to do this. And then I said, I have heard this last time, and I remember this voice, this exchange never leads to anywhere. And that's the wisdom, just the way that lady, the woman, understood. It is not possible to continue like this in this world. The moment you catch it, that wisdom breaks us back, has at least gives us the capacity, do we still want to trade on it or not? I encourage everyone to see it without being judgmental. That's something I must warn everyone. Sometimes when we talk about introspections, it becomes a little more judgmental. No. You see, these all energies, there is no person on this planet who is never angry or always perpetual happy. These all energies are playing within ourselves. I would encourage everyone more to take an approach of a scientist than a judge, because then we are interested in the texture. And then in that same thing, one of the things I decided earlier is I've always found when I'm at Sangha, at any of the Ananda center, especially when there is a satsang, it is a very beautiful energy, a satsang energy, and it brings us all to the level of consciousness which we sort of are very, very elevated, I may say. And then in that, and that's why most of the people around here, the conversations are very, very harmonious, very melodious, I would say. So I decided one time at that time, like whatever decision I'm going to make, especially with the important decisions, I can make it throughout the week, but I'll check it again when I am in that high energy state, energy of satsang. And that has helped me a big time also. And that's what I think, because I know how the melody that sounds. And then the same thing, when we know the particular way our voice sounds, when especially we are not very energetic or sort of somewhere in the middle, when we pay attention, we realize, okay, this is the time to either withdraw, to raise, or just to stay. Because nothing is permanent in that state, but when we have become wise, we at least have this capacity to juggle our energies and decide that, okay, let's pause. You see, all this, just by doing what? Listening to the tone of voice. Because what Swamiji gives us in that way is a key to enter the consciousness behind that. Beautiful, isn't it? Swami Kriyananda ji read Master's book, Autobiography of a Yogi, and then he went all the way across the United States, and then he became his disciple. That's for immediately. So in time, Master asked him, like, did you read my book, Autobiography of a Yogi? Swamiji said, yes, I did. And to which he said, did you like it? He says, of course. He says, yes. And that's why? Because it has my vibrations. When we read Swamiji's writing or Master's writing, no, they are also expressing things with the words. And we also try to understand them because we have that same language, but he has put in more than just words inside. You see, again, there's some truth that these great souls have touched and they want to give it to us. There is no other way they can give it. Well, there are many ways can give it, but this is one of the easier way which sort of mass consciousness understands is reading. But how we read is also very, very important. One of the precepts that Jesus Christ gave is that to those who received him gave he the power to become sons of God. To those who receive him. So it is up to us, especially when we read, it is also kind of a listening, to listen, to read behind the word so that we can also touch the same truth that these guys are trying to share with us. And you see, like the same experience, the same approach which can help us touch the truth also helps us in all day-to-day conversation as we interact with the world, as we interact with friends and families, because it is one consciousness trying to engage with the other consciousness. And when we live and exist at that level, we feel the harmony, we feel the oneness, we're close to all that is. Joy to you. Thank you for sharing this evening with us. Joy to you again.